halacha 18, in chapter 5 in the book of Waking Like a Jew, discussing various times that a person is required to wash his hands due to certain actions that bring along impurity to the hands, and only water can get rid of it, even if it's just opening up the going like this. That's the minimum that you need to do in order to get rid of it. We mentioned 14 different actions, and we began going through them. The last one we mentioned is about scratching one's head, that if a person scratches on his head, in between his hairs, he gets both dirt and klipa and ruach ra on his hands, and he cannot learn Torah until he cleans them, and he has the ruach ra until he washes his hands.
And what about the bald part?
People who are bald. It's a good question. I actually didn't write that here. Don't have hair.
You have a bald part.
People that don't. So that's a good question because it seemingly here has to do with hair. Wow, I can't believe I missed that. Okay, I'll have to look that up. But one thing's for sure, the beard is not part of this. So if you scratch your beard, it's okay. You don't have to, This area is not part of it. Nothing happens. Everything's still kosher. You don't have to wash your hands. You can continue learning Torah. And it's only if the Alter Rebbe writes explicitly, it only applies if you scratch in between your hair. But if you're just, if you use a cloth or if a person just rubs his head, it doesn't count. For example, like this. If I go like this to my head, it's only a scratch. Okay? That's when it's required. Okay, lice. Unfortunately, here in Israel, Makas Kinin, that's Rhyme, many years ago, had a neighbor for the terrible tragedy of Kinin. And Israel is Makas Kinin, the lice attacks. There is a plague of lice on people's hair, especially girls. And halachas are as follows. Lice in halach are considered the dirtiest and nastiest of creations. They're considered pure sweat. And therefore, if a person touches them, they're considered to transfer ruach ra onto your hands, and you need to wash your hands as a result. So that's the halacha. A person that touches lice to wash his hands. Now, if he touches lice from areas of sweat, not only does he have to wash his hands, but he cannot even learn Torah till he cleans his hands, because it's considered also to dirty his hands. So if we have lice growing in a sweat area, then it would dirty the hands as well. You can't learn Torah. If it's just lice procreating on the table and you touch them, then you would have to wash your hands because of the ruach ra. Marital relations, the halach is that a person has to wash hands after marital intercourse. Minadin, as we said, it follows the general policy, one washing just going like this. However, the minhag is, as written in many poskim, to wash like you would wash in the morning. This is after marital intimacy. The Alter Rebbe writes, based on the poskim in the siddur, to wash also beforehand. So we wash before and we wash also afterwards. One who enters into a cemetery is required to wash his hands immediately after leaving the cemetery. That's why most cemeteries always have an area to wash. Believe it or not, the cemetery where the Rebbe Ratz is buried used to not have one. And the Rebbe would have to wait until he came to 770 to wash his hands. And so, but now everyone does, all of them do, and it's for this purpose of getting the tumah, the ruach ra, as soon as possible.
If you go to Meron, for instance.
No, kivrei tzadikim, we don't wash hands in kivrei tzadikim. Good question. We do not wash hands. No, here this is a no. You would because you are amongst many other people. You're amongst many other people. You would have to wash hands. If it's only a kivrei tzadikim like Rameir Balanes and like Shem Bayichai, like the kivrei Avis, like Kebarachel, those places okay, but other places you would have to wash hands, even though technically your address is kivrei tzadikim. That's why if you go to the Rebbe's Oihel, you still have to wash hands afterwards, and the Rebbe would wash his hands after visiting the Frierdiker Rebbe. If you enter a non-Jewish cemetery, the poskim will say that it's in all likely you don't have to wash hands because that type of tumah does not hang out there. It receives no money. Meaning it doesn't get fueled. It doesn't receive the kedusha fuel to hang out there.
Which kind of cemetery?
Gentile cemetery.
Oh, Gentile.
Yeah. Some have a custom to throw grass or earth behind their back after they leave the cemetery. This is the custom of the Rebbe as well. This is not an obligation. The minhag officially in Shulchan Aruch is only by a levaya, not when you just visit a cemetery. But it is. You just need to know that this does exist. This custom does as well exist by the
Rebbe. It has nothing to do with tumah.
No, there's different reasons for why it's written down. Regarding how many times, again, minadin, just like this, but the custom is to wash like you would wash after you leave the bathroom or in the morning when you wake up. The same halacha applies if a person ever has to deal with a corpse. If a person's doing tara, he would have to wash his hands one time. And as I said before, we do 3 times. That's our custom. Not only that, but being in the same room as a corpse. So the person is, let's say, in some places they have a minhag of bringing in the body to the shul to do a hesped, and you were in the shul at the same time, even though you didn't join the levaya. This is like the levaya. A person would be required to wash his hands. Regarding a person who entered a hospital, there's a person who entered a hospital to wash his hands. Officially, he's in a building that contains dead people. Even though hospitals are about making people live, unfortunately, people die there too. So the answer is that it's not necessary unless you are in the actual morgue itself. In the actual morgue, a person in that room passed away, then a person would be required to wash his hands, as we said before. By a funeral, it was one of the things we listed, a person required to wash his hands. There's a number of minhagim that apply by a funeral by washing. So first and foremost, even more so than from a cemetery, we are not here to wash inconsecutively. There's a tremendous amount of tumah, of ruach ra, of evil spirits that come to funerals. For that reason, it was the old Tzfat custom, which I think today has become extinct because we have all the new people who came and they have no idea what the original Tzfat custom was, for women not to join levayas. The custom in Tzfat was when there was a levaya, women would go inside of their house. They wouldn't, if they were outside, they would go inside. Not only wouldn't join the levaya, they wouldn't even be in their backyard. They would lock themselves in their house. They wouldn't go out because of the ruach ra, and whatever. Today it's here in Tzfat even it's not kept too, but this was the original Tzfat custom in the late 1800s, as written in the Sefer Eretz Chaim of Rabbi Chaim Siton, who was the chief rabbi of Tzfat.
Why is women specifically?
It's an arichos. I don't want to go into it, but there's a. It's not that's some of it. There's a whole bunch of different klippos that come to levayas. One of them has to do with women. Some have to do with men. That's why also the sons, they don't go behind. None of the sons or daughters or grandchildren or great-grandchildren are allowed to go to the funeral behind the father. This is not just a Tzfat custom. It's also a Jerusalem custom. It's also a Chabad custom. There's a lot going on. There's a whole party of ruach ras, of evil spirits that come by a time of the death. It's the strongest tumah is tumas meis, when a person passes away. So because of this, we have the following counter customs when a person has joined a funeral. So first of all, that is where it's recorded in the Shulchan Aruch that upon leaving the cemetery, we uproot some earth or grass from the cemetery grounds and we throw it behind our back. We also try to exit the cemetery in a different path than we entered it. So if we went from the right, we go from the left this time, etc. We go on a different path. By washing hands, we follow the following customs. We, first of all, are very careful not to enter into a home until we wash. One exception to this is a shul. So if the levaya is taking place in 770 or in front of the Beis Medrash, you can go into the Beis Medrash and wash over there. But we don't go into our house to wash. We also do not hand anybody the vessel. We put the vessel down and we turn it upside down. So we turn it upside down and we leave it like that and someone else comes and takes it. We never hand it to somebody else. We do not dry our hands. We let them dry on their own. After the washing ceremony is done, we then go and do the following ceremony that's written in the Shulchan Aruch in the Ramah, chapter 376. We sit down on a chair and we begin saying Psalm 91 in Tehillim, Kapitel Tzadik Aleph, which is Yeshiva Seiser Elyon, and we say it 7 times, switching chairs every time we say it. If we're sitting on a bench, we switch areas of the bench. So if you started off there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, the way it's said is that you say it until the pasuk of Ki Malacham, and each time you progress one word in that verse. So the first time you say Yeshiva says Elyon, you finish Ki. You move, Ki Malacham. You move, etc., until you finish it. The seven words in that verse. This is a custom written in the Shulchan Aruch. So for some reason, a lot of people don't do it because of lack of knowledge. But this is a custom written in the Shulchan Aruch. And it is the custom in Chabad that we follow. And the Ramah writes, when? After a funeral, after the washing. You finished washing, right afterwards, you say Yeshiva says Elyon 7 times.
I remember
why in 7 different areas. Now, why do we do what the Ramah says? The Ramah writes this. As the Ruach Ras, the evil spirits that are by the funerals, they attach to everybody that was there. And it takes 7 Yeshiva Seisers to get rid of them. So if you've ever been to a funeral and you haven't done it, I would suggest doing it right after class is over. Otherwise, we have a lot of participants.
Once in Tsfat, we were carrying the going to the tomb, and the people would do it on their way to the.
No, that's something else. That's called Sheva Mamades. That's nothing to do with this.
Stop.
That's Sheva Mamades that is customary to do. It's also recorded in Paiskin that's customary to do by Levias. Most Levias don't do it today. Only certain communities are accustomed to do the Sheva Mamades. But that's what you're referring to as Sheva Mamades, where you stop 7 times.
Different.
That's also for different reasons, but that's during the funeral itself. That's for the Chaver Kadisha carrying the mace. This is not Sheva Mamades. This is every participant of the Levi. Even if you didn't participate in the cemetery, you just participated in front of 770, you participated in front of the base medrash, you saw the mace leave, you walked in 4 amos, that's it. You sit down, you do this process.
Which kapitel is it again?
91. Yeshiva says, we say it every single, we say it in David.
Every night.
We say it every night. We say it in the Hinayim. It's part of the Hinayim on Motzei Shabbos. The Hinayim is the pasuk before him. Okay.
We should say so 7 times. Never done.
Okay, haircut is pretty straightforward. We wash our hands after getting a haircut, even if only a small amount of hair was cut. Even if we're cutting someone else's hair, we do not cut our own hair. We are to wash our hands afterwards. If he's a guy, he doesn't have to worry. If he's a guy, he doesn't have to wash his hands. If he's a Jew, then yes.
So a Jew who didn't do this, and I'm now getting a haircut from this Jew, is that hurting me?
No, it's his brown, not yours. It says, if you don't wash your hands, you go crazy. Well, how is his going crazy going to affect you?
I don't know. He's putting this.
Worst comes to worst, someone else will be the next barber. You'll get a different barber next time.
Okay. Come with the cancer on my head.
By an Absharanish, when you're honored to cut his hair, you don't wash your hands. It's a mitzvah. It's mitzvah cutting. It's not the same thing. So we don't wash our hands afterwards. Bodily fluids. Oh, important. I forgot to mention something. Non-kosher animals, a person who touches a non-kosher animal, it does not have to wash his hands at all. There is no impurity that is given over. So if you touch a dog, you touch a cat, live, dead, doesn't matter. You have to wash. For hygiene reasons, you have to wash your hands, but not for halachic or ruach ra reasons. If you shook hands with a guy, you don't have to wash your hands afterwards. There's no ruach ra. If they do, and you touch the lice, then yes, you do. I agree with you. So it all depends of, do all animals have lice? I don't know.
Dogs, cats also.
Cats are just hanging outside at the moment.
Okay, we're going to call it a chapter. Festival of Lights. Wow, another year, huh? Here we are. Okay, first, you can all get the book. Great book. Laws and Customs of Chanukah. 4 chapters on Chassidus, history, and the rest is halachas. So we'll begin with a little, some of the introductions to the Chanukah festival. Yeah, it's very soon. Let's begin with a little bit of the history. We'll go into a little bit of Chassidus, and then we begin the halachas of it. Chanukah stands for 2 things that we shine and write. One is Chanu b'chaf hey, and the second meaning of it is dedication or inauguration. As we know, in the period of the Second Temple, right, a lot of people are confused when the Chanukah story happened. The Chanukah story happened after the story of Purim, about 250 years later, approximately. So we're looking at about, 150 before the Common Era. Anybody know? Oh, I wrote it down over here. I didn't like that. It was pretty close.
171.
I wrote it's anywhere between 140 and 171. I said 150. I did. Okay. So that's when it happened. At that time, in the times of the Second Temple, the Jewish people they had autonomy, but they were still under, of course, the greater rule of the Persian Empire. When the Persian Empire fell apart, they were then under the rule of the Greek Empire. Had all the stories with all of the different leaders, the Hellenist leaders that took over at that time. And then came the great decrees of Antiochus, which was named his name as he was called Epiphanes, means God's beloved. That's what it says it stands for. but it can also mean the madman, Epimanes. He also had the epithet of Epimanes, which means a madman. In any event, so this story happened at that period of time, and they defiled the entire temple area, including the altar, the Mizbeach. When the Hashmonaim came in after conquering the Greeks, they saw the Mizbeach was defiled and rededicated it, and that's one of the reasons why it's called Chanukah. Not just because of the name abbreviation, Chanukah, that mentions the date, but because that's what was done. It was dedicating the Mizbeach. In fact, we don't always necessarily pay so much attention to that aspect. We're more focusing on, wow, there was a miracle for 8 days, the candles lit. With all honesty, there were tons of miracles that were flying around in temple times. We don't celebrate or commemorate them, especially with costly holidays that we have to purchase sufganiyot, and that we have to give Chanukah gelt, and that we have to, et cetera, for 8 days. It's unheard of. So what's so special about the 8 days of candlelighting? So one of the main aspects is that the Beis HaMikdash was rededicated, was reinaugurated, and that's in fact one of the reasons. That is in fact the reason why, according to those places who hold you have to have Sudas Mitzvah on Chanukah, that we have a Sudas Mitzvah. It's not because of the miracle of the oil. It's because of the fact that when we rededicate the temple, we celebrate. When Shlomo HaMelech built the temple, inaugurated the temple, they had a celebration on Yom Kippur. They ate on Yom Kippur. It says also, if the temple is rededicated by Yom Kippur time, we're going to eat. We're going to feast on Yom Kippur. So due to this rededication of the Mizbeach, some Rishonim hold that we have a mitzvah to eat meals on Chanukah. We'll get to that detail. We'll review that detail when we get to it. The second term, of course, Chanukah, that they rested on the 25th. But the truth is, the second reason of that they rested on the 25th is not does not have consensus in the Rishonim. Not everyone agrees to that. Many Rishonim hold Chanukah Dal. They call it Chanukah. They would have to call it Chanukah. Chanukah. They hold that right, jar. They hold that we actually conquered the Greeks on the 24th and began resting there. So that's a machlekes when the date was the victory lap on the 24th. When did we lie down in bed with, an enjoyment and relaxation after the bloody war? Was it the 24th or the 25th? So that is a machlekes in the Rishonim. We mentioned in the previous years, we'll repeat it again, that even though Chanukah, of course, is only a rabbinical holiday, it's one of the 8 rabbinical mitzvahs, nonetheless, the Chassam Sofer writes that it is rooted in a biblical precept.
7 rabbinical mitzvahs. 7 rabbinical mitzvahs, correct. It is rooted in a biblical precept, as the Torah requires that a Jew commemorate miraculous occasions, whether it be personal or global. So whether if you had a personal miracle happen in your lifetime, that of your life, you're supposed to make a personal Purim. Many communities and many people even today have Purims that they celebrate. You have descendants of the Shla, they have certain dates that they celebrate Purim dates. It's their personal Purim, their personal celebration. That is a mitzvah in the Torah to celebrate and commemorate a day that God did a life-saving miracle on your behalf. And so too globally. Chanukah, the Chanukah miracle, is a biblical obligation to commemorate it. How to commemorate? Lighting candles, eating sufganiyot, that's already not biblical. That is already up to the discussion of the sages and Jewish custom. But the fact that you will commemorate, that you need to commemorate, that is already a biblical requirement. So you said meat. You was talking about meat, eating meat.
Right, so correct. So if you make a big feast, it would, if that is the only way somebody, Chassam Sofer says like this, if somebody passed the 8 days of Chanukah, didn't light candles one time, didn't say Hallel, didn't do anything, transgress a biblical command. But if he did something, even if he had a big party, he covered Chanukah, he fulfills a biblical command. The biblical command he fulfills, because he commemorated it. Okay, in Chassidus, we learned that the entire idea of the Chanukah miracle is to celebrate the purity of the Torah. As the Yevanim, the Shavim, had no issue with people learning Torah as a science, as another form of wisdom. Their issue was just that the Jewish people were connecting with something godly, with something spiritual.
And that they were completely opposed to. And therefore, the whole Nakuda of the Chanukah story is that a person's Torah learning has to be completely and always connected to God. We're going to begin the halachas. Beginning from Chanukah, I believe this year is Sunday night, right? Sunday night, yes. So beginning from Mincha of Sunday, we don't say Tachanun until Chanukah is over, until the night afterwards. That's when we start saying Tachanun and Grishma Shalamita. But from Mincha before, we begin omitting Tachanun. Visiting a cemetery. We do not visit cemeteries during Chanukah. However, to go to Kivrei Tzadikim is okay. So if you want to visit the Arizal here, it's not a problem. If you want to take a shortcut, you're never supposed to do that, even during the week. Never take a shortcut through a cemetery. It's forbidden. And certainly in Chanukah, we don't do it. Somebody who has a shleishim, shiva, a yard site, they go the day before Chanukah or after Chanukah. We don't go during Chanukah to visit. And the reason for this is because we don't want to bring up sad occasions during this joyous time. We began discussing festival meals. So, as I hinted to earlier, there's a major debate in the Rishonim if the sages enacted feasting during the Chanukah festival. Now, I know it sounds kind of strange and contradicts the famous joke of how Jews celebrate, right? They tried to kill us, we won, let's eat. Mm-hmm. So this contradicts that famous joke. As many places can hold that Chanukah is very different than every other holiday that we have in our calendar. Every holiday that we have in our calendar, number one, involves some kind of physical, that we were under some kind of physical oppression and was saved from it. Whether it be Yitzias Mitzrayim, which celebrates Pesach and Sukkot, whether it be Purim holiday, which commemorates being under the threat of annihilation. But Chanukah is different. Chanukah is different, as I said before, the entire idea is something spiritual. That's why the Chachamim made the main tikkun of saying Hallel and lighting candles, which is something of spiritual nature. It's a romance with God. It's not necessarily a feast. And therefore they hold that actually there's no mitzvah at all to feast on Chanukah. It's meant to be commemorated only in spiritual ways. There's no mitzvah at all to feast. You do not have to have, and not only that, but the Suda is not considered Suda's mitzvah. If you hold the feast, not considered Suda's mitzvah. Others say no. Forget about the aspect that the main oppression here was spiritual and that we won the spiritual war, and therefore we commemorated spiritually. We had here the inauguration of the temple again, so we're supposed to celebrate that with physical meals. So that's what the debate is based on. Practically, what is concluded in the Shulchan Aruch is that it is a Jewish custom to increase in festivities during Chanukah, and we're meant to increase every day, just like we're increasing candles. We're supposed to increase in festivities from one day to the next. But in order so to have the status of a Sudas mitzvah, according to everybody, you're supposed to speak Divrei Torah during the meal. You have to make the meal more spiritually oriented. So when you do that, then it turns into a Sudas mitzvah. But if you have like a Thanksgiving dinner, you have lots of delicious food, latkes, you have applesauce, and you watch the ball game, it's not a Sudas mitzvah. It doesn't become a Sudas mitzvah unless one of the people in the ball game says a Siddush Avart, unless they say Advar Torah, but otherwise, it's not considered a Sudas mitzvah. On Shabbos Chanukah, it's brought down that you're supposed to increase even more than you would in a regular Shabbos. So you have to plan the Shabbos Chanukah menu to be different and more luxurious than a regular Shabbos. Ooh. Well, which date does it? This year, you're saying the date?
It's already Shabbos Chanukah, whatever it is.
Oh, he's saying the Bar Mitzvah Parasha. Oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah, I'm ready to do it.
Wow. Okay, very good. Very good. Part of the festivity menu that's recorded in the Shulchan Aruch is, believe it or not Sufganiyot. Sufganiyot is not written anywhere. In fact, eating deep fried stuff during Chanukah is not written anywhere. It is in the Paiskim. It's not written anywhere in the Paiskim. Well, we searched for a source and found one. We'll mention that later. But what is mentioned is eating milchiks, dairy. That is what's brought down, and that, of course, is due to the famous heroic actions of Yehudis. We named my newest daughter was named after Yehudis, who fed the enemy general milk, cheese, wine, and put him to sleep, and he died sleeping like a baby after she paraded with his head. So due to this, that since the Chanukah miracle occurred with the help of cheesy foods, of dairy food, so therefore we should eat cheese, eat milchiks,
And drink
to
wine?
commemorate it. Oh, no, not wine. Doesn't say wine, but dairy.
She cut off his head?
Yeah, she cut off his head. Yeah, I mean, she took the sword and, sliced. Yeah.
She shaved us.
Yeah. Jewish women have always been in the forefront of leading the Jewish people to victory throughout Tanakh. You see, it's a pattern. The areas that they're trusted in, that men would never be trusted in, so they can't take that advantage.
Zohar?
We have
Zohar?
with who?
Zohar?
Right, that was with Yael. Yael
Yeah.
chopped off the head of Sisera. Yeah. So where did we get the eating of deep fried things? So one thing's for certain, of course, all the bakeries and anyone who can make an extra income in Chanukah through selling these products definitely has an initiative and a reason to come up with it. But in truth, it is written already in the Tshuva of the father of the Rambam. Father of the Rambam, his name was Maimonides. And Maimon, right? Maimonides is called after Maimon. So he was the Maimonides. So Rabbi Maimon, he was asked this question: is there an inyan of eating deep fried stuff called sufganiyot? That's the lashon there, sufganiya. Of eating sufganiya, which is, why is it called sufganiya? Because it's from the lashon of sfog, which means it's like it's like a sponge that becomes absorbed full with oil. That's why it's called. You ever try squeezing sufganiya, you'll have enough oil to last you 8 days. If only they would have served that in the times of the Chanukah miracle, they wouldn't have to go finding oil, and we wouldn't have a miracle on anything. So, right? So, they have pictures of people lighting candles on the sufganiyah. It lasts for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. Anyway, so he says that no, there is no source for this minhag, but every Jewish custom is to be cherished, and therefore he says don't negate it. It's a good thing, but obviously this is not something that's a chayva. It's not something that's a minadin. Certainly someone who is on a diet for health reasons, he is definitely yaitz at the festival according to all opinions, even if he doesn't eat sufganiyot, or if he eats sufganiyot without any riba inside. Right? There are no requirements.
So it's by
the same thing as latkes as well.
Sephardim, the same.
Yeah. Maimon was Sephardi.
Yeah.
Latkes is the same idea. No source. You don't have to deep fry them. You can bake them if you want, but it's a Jewish custom. We add an olive oil. We add an oil, especially olive oil, to commemorate the miracle.
What was Maimon's connection to oil then?
Well, he was asked the question, do I have to eat sufganiyot on Chanukah? He was asked, I see everybody eating sufganiyot on Chanukah. Where is this coming from? Especially the store ones, they know how to do it in a way that there's not that much oil coming out. But if you ever see the Sephardim, the way they do it, it is soaked. It's soaked with oil. The homemade stuff, oh my gosh. So he was asked, do I have to be eating this stuff? My wife says it's sacrilege not to eat it. So Maimon replied that, it's a Jewish custom, you should cherish it, but it doesn't have a source.
The father of
the Rambam, yes.
Maimon.
Learning Torah. The joyous occasion of Chanukah is to be utilized to increase in Torah learning. One is obligated during Chanukah to learn Torah and pray with extra concentration, in light of the fact that the Yevanim desire to uproot Torah learning and Avodah. We commonly find, it says, this is unlike the custom today in which people use the days of Chanukah for games and other mundane entertainment, so writes the Shloh HaKadosh. So we already see it's a tradition from hundreds of years back that people would take it easy by Chanukah. They would take off from learning. They would, take it easy, enjoy life. It's the whole opposite, the contrary to what the whole purpose of Chanukah is that we only took out the dreidel when the Yevanim came to check on us to make sure we weren't learning. Now, no one's coming to check on us. And now we do the opposite. We play dreidel. The Mashgiach comes to check on us. We take out the books. So it's kind of an oxymoron of what the Chanukah was. This was brought down in Sfarim. It says, this is not a correct minhag. A person is to increase in Torah learning during Chanukah. That's the whole purpose of the holiday. Charity. It's recorded in the Magen Avram and other places in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch and others that it is customary to increase in stock on Chanukah. There's a lot of segulas associated with stock on Chanukah, and therefore we try to increase, especially during Chanukah, in giving tzedakah. And that leads us to Chanukah geld. It is a minhag Yisrael to distribute Chanukah geld to one's children on Chanukah, and the Rebbe gave the following directives. Number one, it's distributed even to married children. So even just because your children are no longer in your house doesn't mean you're exempt from this Chanukah tax. The Chanukah tax is still applicable. Even if you're 120 years old and your child just turned age 100, dad of 120 needs to call dad of 100 and tell him, this is your Chanukah geld son. The purpose of this, the Rebbe says, the purpose of giving the Chanukah geld is to motivate the child to study Torah. So when you give it to a child, it's as like an exchange for his Torah learning, to motivate him to learn more Torah. And therefore, the Rebbe says a person should explain to the child that he's giving it to them in order for him to increase in his religiosity. When to give, so it used to be that parents, the tradition only was to give one time during Chanukah. That was the tradition that it used to be. But the Rebbe went ahead and changed that and said parents should give Chanukah to the children every day of Chanukah, except Shabbos, of course. But you don't get away. You just have to pay a double tax the day before or the day after. So you just don't physically give that day, but you're still paying it off.
And it has to increase every day?
Do
you increase it every day?
So you're asking if you have to increase. No, we only increase. The custom is to give a double or triple portion on the fourth or fifth night. We don't have to increase the other nights, but you could if you want to. Yeah, sure.
It's going to be done by bank transfer, no special.
No, there's no special. I'm sure somebody came up with that special Chanukah geld coin that you have to buy, but no, there is not. So long as good old money that can be used in transactions is the Chanukah geld. Now, how much? You have to decide. There is no minimum or maximum. Everyone, the Shiur delay according to what they can afford. The Rebbe also spoke that one should give Chanukah geld to their spouse.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
Husband to wife and wife to husband, which is kind of weird because according to Allah, it's the husband's money, but in any event. So the husband gives to the wife gives to the husband, the idea of trading gifts. Playing dreidel is a very old Jewish tradition, not recorded in the Paiskim, not brought down anywhere. It's just a tradition brought down from generation to generation. This is what we did. And there is a certain Kabbalistic meaning that's written behind it, but it is not something that it is a requirement to play, and especially is forbidden to play for gambling purposes. You have many people who sit down, they do dreidel games, they have a pot in the middle of $50, $100. It's forbidden. It's usher to gamble anytime, especially on Chanukah. There's no head to gamble on Chanukah. And even though people do this, I've seen it myself, it is not okay. As it says in halacha, somebody who gambles is pasul le'edus. He becomes an invalid aid. That means if the person has a Chanukah wedding, he was called to be an aid for his friend by the chuppah, and he just finished playing a game of dreidel gambling, he is now a pasul aid. He shows up, they do the chuppah, he's the exclusive witness, and no one else is a witness, as they are accustomed to say. It ends up, this was a beautiful wedding. They ate, they drank, they danced. Only one thing was wrong. There was no marriage, because they were pasul. It's a very serious thing. Gambling is not a joke. Gambling is a very severe isser according to halacha, aside for its addictive and life-destroying nature. And therefore, a person has to be very careful not to. Now, if you're going to play with, agurot, if you have a pot of 30 agurot, okay, little money that nobody cares about. Nobody cares about winning or losing. That's not real gambling. But anytime it's talking about real money, that's real gambling, and therefore it's awesome. Cards. Rabbi Yitzchak of Barditchev in the Sefer Kedusha Sleepy writes that the cards that we know with the ace and the joker, those type of cards contain a tremendous klipa. And therefore he says you shouldn't play them. And this is mentioned by Chanukah because people were accustomed, till today it's the custom of some, to play cards of Chanukah after you light candles. And therefore he says this should not be done. Okay, the Chanukah prayers. Alanis. So So we recite Al Nisim during Chanukah throughout Shemina Esrei of Shachris, Mincha, and Ma'ariv, and throughout Birchas Hamazon. In the event that a person forgot to say it, and the halacha is, I shut this off. In the event that somebody forgot to say Al Nisim, there is no making up for it, whether in Birchas Hamazon or in Shemina Esrei. A person just continues as usual. What he can do is he can make it up in the end of Shemina Esrei before the second Yid Ratzon. He is able to recite it if he wants to. Prior to the last Yid Ratzon, before taking 3 steps back, you can read the whole Nusach if you missed it. Convention, likewise, you can make it up by the Harachamans. Once you reach the Harachamans, officially Birchas Hamazon has concluded. And therefore, you can add whatever you want, and therefore you can add over there, if you missed it, you can add the entire section of Al Nisim that you missed in the middle.
Davening, there isn't the usual step, stages, arrangement stages where you forget it by the.
What do you have?
Forgot it.
No, you can't make it up. That's only, you were saying what we said about St. Talamatar? No, it doesn't work for. Once you missed it from Maidim, it's finished. Once you said you finished that bracha, there's no making it up. You can't make it up. Unless you finish Menashe, as I said, before the second Yid Ratzon, you can still say it.
But it doesn't count for what you're saying.
It's not in Shemina Esrei anymore. It's outside of Shemina Esrei. Can you announce Al Nisim? Can you Al Nisim? So before Mincha you could. Before Ma'ariv you can't. It's a hefsek. It's an interval. That's the way we rule. So machlekes, the way we rule is that you cannot make an interval. You cannot make a speech interval, speech interruption between Kaddish and the starting between Gal Yisrael and the starting Shemona Esrei, and therefore all you can do is bang, hold up a sign if you want, send everyone a text message at that second. You can't speak.
The banging is okay.
Banging, yes, just don't say the words Al Nisim. What's suggested to be done is that when you reach Al Nisim, say it out loud, just the words, and that will remind people.
The same as Yari Vayavo?
Correct, same exact idea. In Me'ein Shalish, which is the after blessing we say from a Zainis, Hagafen, or the fruits of Eretz Yisrael, we do not, not fruits of Yisrael, the 5 fruits of the 5 minim, pomegranates, olives, etc. We don't mention anything of Chanukah. There's no mention at all, neither on Shabbos, neither during the week. There's no mention made. Hallel. Chanukah is the one holiday that everybody agrees that the entire holiday is a rabbinical obligation to recite Hallel. So it has the strongest Hallel. And I should also say Sukkos. Hallel and Sukkos both are agreed to by everybody that you need to say Hallel, and that's why we say the complete Hallel on all days, as opposed to Pesach and Rosh Chodesh, which it's only half Hallel is said because it's not a complete rabbinical obligation. So we say complete Hallel on all of these days. The laws of Hallel they're discussed elsewhere, all of the different details, but in essence, the Hallel can be said anytime throughout the day. You don't have a limit. It's not until Chatzos. You can say it until nightfall if you missed it, but the minig is, of course, to say it right after Shachris. But it's not a requirement. It can, in essence, be said anytime. Are women obligated in saying Hallel? The answer is women are not obligated in saying any Hallel. Let's see what I wrote here. Oh, I didn't write about that to Rabbi. But nonetheless, they are able to say it, even though they're not obligated in it. And they, as I said, they can say it up until nightfall. So even though up until Shkia. No, you do not need a minyan for Hallel. You only need 3 people to say the stanzas of Haidu Lashem Ki Tov Yom Chaste out loud. But if you don't have 3, you just say it on your own. So there's no withholding of saying Hallel just because you don't have anybody with you. Tefillin is regular. The davening follows a regular weekday davening. everything is business as usual until Anisim. You start Shemana Esrei, say Anisim, that's our first change. Our second change is that as soon as we finish Shemana Esrei, Chazaras HaShabbat, we go straight to Hallel.
No tachanun.
Well, yeah, of course, we said before, no tachanun. We go straight to Hallel. After Hallel, unlike Reish Chodesh and unlike Chol HaMoed, we say half Kaddish. Not whole Kaddish, half Kaddish. The reason is because Chol HaMoed and Reish Chodesh, right after Hallel, we go ahead and we already say Shir Shel Yain. And then we go ahead and do Kriyas HaTorah and we say Asher Nevolatzion. And we then say only half Kaddish before Musaf. Since we have Musaf, we only say half Kaddish before Musaf, so we say the whole Kaddish right after Hallel. However, here, since there is no Musaf, so we save the whole Kaddish for where it's supposed to be after Volatzion. So we say half Kaddish, and then afterwards we do Kriyas HaTorah, and we continue a regular davening. So it's a regular davening, basically, just with Hallel in the middle, and Kriyas HaTorah afterwards, and then we go back to Asher Volatzion, Shir Shel Yom, etc. Okay, we're going to skip the section of Kriyas HaTorah, the different details. We're going to go straight into lighting candles, the main mitzvah. The main mitzvah the Chachamim instituted for the Chanukah celebration, of course, is the lighting of the Chanukah candles, and it's brought in Chazal, the Gemara, Maseches Shabbos, page 23b. The one who is careful in this mitzvah merits having children who are Torah scholars. Basically, light represents Torah, and therefore the mitzvahs involving light merits one to have children who are Talmidei Chachamim. This is both with lights of Shabbos candles and with lights of the Chanukah candles. And therefore, a person should try to have the best of the best. He should try to be Mahadir in a menorah. He should be Mahadir in the type of oil he uses, in the wicks he uses. Everything should try to be A+.
Who lights?
Who is obligated? That's the next one. Right, okay. So, interestingly, the mitzvah of Chanukah candles is not a personal obligation on the individual, but rather an obligation upon the household, meaning every household is required to make sure that there are Chanukah candles lit inside of that home. Once the candles are lit inside of that home, then the mitzvah is fulfilled. This, of course, is what created the difference between the Sephardi and Ashkenazi custom. According to everybody, once one set of Chanukah candles are lit in the home, the whole household is Yetzer the mitzvah. We've all done the mitzvah. The question is there a super mitzvah for everybody to light? For me to also light? That's the question. Is there a hiddur mitzvah involved in additional family members lighting or not? This is the case of dispute that we have between the Sephardim and the Ashkenazim. Famously, as we've mentioned in previous years, is a dispute that we have between the Sephardi Rishonim versus Ashkenazi Rishonim, Tosfos versus Rambam. And interestingly, in this case, the Sephardi custom follows the Ashkenazi tradition, while the Ashkenazi custom follows the Sephardi tradition. We follow the Rambam, they follow Tosfos, the German. Yeah. The Gemara in Masechah Shabbos says that Ner Ishu Beisa is the basic mitzvah. Having one candle in the whole house is the basic minimum mitzvah. That's the minimum. Even on the 8th night, you're a house full of 10 people, 10 boys. You lit one candle on the 8th night, you fulfill the mitzvah. You're good. One candle. Everybody. Were you super Jew? No. Did you fulfill the mitzvah? Yes. Now the question is, what does super Jew have to do to earn his title? What does he have to do?
Everybody lights.
So the Gemara continues. If you want to be super Jew, then then everybody lights. You light per household. So if I have 10 household members, then I light 10 candles. Or each one lights a candle for a total of 10. Same idea. And then it says, if you want to be super Jew, then you have to light per night. First night 1, second night 2. Bisham says the opposite. First night 8, but whatever. You light per night. So what is the dispute? The dispute is, what is the super Jew level? is super Jew. Mahadran and Mahadran and Mahadran. I like twisting it into this. There's the Mahadran level. I think in the art school that's how they translate. I'm joking.
Yeah, really?
They have a little picture of Superman there. two cloaks instead of one. So it's Mahadran and Mahadran and Mahadran. So the question is, what is Mahadran and what is Mahadran and Mahadran? So Mahadran, we all know. Mahadran means, super Jew means, you light according to the amount of family members. The question is, when we say Mahadran and Mahadran is you light per night, according to the number of night you're in, is that in addition to the previous step or in exchange for the previous step? Again, in addition, meaning simple math, on the 8th night, I have 10 people in my house. That means I'm lighting 80 candles. Or does it mean instead of choosing to light one per household member, just light one per night in addition? So it'll be one in the first night, two in the second night. That's the question. And that's machlokes. Tosfos holds that, without any doubt in his mind, it means light one per night. Go up each night. Don't light according to the family members, as otherwise you've ruined the whole purpose of the super Jews act. And he says like this: the whole purpose of this third level of Mahadran and Mahadran is to show to the world which night of Chanukah we're in, and to emphasize the miracle. Wow, it lasted 8 nights. You see 8 candles. It lasted 7 nights. You see 7 candles. So you're emphasizing which day it is and how long the miracle lasted. However, if you're saying it's a plus, that it's in addition to the previous custom, so a family that has 5 total family members, on the 5th night, you're going to see on the 5th, you're going to see 25 candles. How is somebody going to know it's the 5th night? He'll go to the next door's neighbor. He'll see 50 candles. Says Tosfos, it makes no sense. Nobody understands what's going on here. The whole thing is mishubash. The whole thing is confused. So therefore, he says, nonsense. You're only supposed to light 1 candle per home. Just go up each night in the number of candles for that night. The Rambam, however, says no. It's an addition. So regarding this matter, Sephardim became accustomed to do like Tosfos. Ashkenazim became accustomed to do like Rambam. So therefore, we follow the Rambam, and every male family member lights their own Chanukah menorah, and we go up each night. The Sephardim follow Tosfos, and therefore, only the father of the home, or if there's no father of the home, then the mother of the home lights the candles, and nobody else. None of the kids light. By Sephardim, Miskanim, they don't start lighting their own Chanukah candles until after they're married and living on their own. They are super neglected in the mitzvah, as I could say. They've been neglected of the mitzvah of Chanukah, because they never get to do it. It's like us lighting Shabbos candles for them. Men light Shabbos candles. So we hardly ever get to do it unless the opportunity arrives. By then, they have to wait till they get married. They literally never light Chanukah candles.
So what about the girls?
The girls our girls? Ashkenazim. Right, so Ashkenazi girls and wives never accepted this Mahadran and a Mahadran mitzvah.
And why?
Never accepted it. There's different reasons why, but bottom line is that they stick with the original mitzvah of being Yaitse with the husband.
What about the Rabbi? At one time he asked everybody.
Correct,
to
in 1988, I believe, Memches, the Rebbe initiated that the girls should light, but that was a one-time basis, and the next year the Rebbe didn't repeat it. And bottom line is that it is the custom of Chabad, as is the Ashkenazi custom, only the boys light. But if a girl wants to light, it's not a sin. If it'll increase her spiritual behavior or increase her religious duties, and, her dedication.
With the bracha, it's okay still.
She can even light with a bracha, correct? Because if they're Sephardim, then it's a problem. Because they hold that there was never an institution made for family members to light in a case that you're already lighting according to the number of nights. So they say it's a bracha levatala. So they hold that family members are not allowed to light with a bracha. However, according to us, it's mutter. The question is, did women accept upon themselves this super Jew custom? So if normally they're not super Jew and now they decide to be, let them. Okay. You don't have to make a big fight over it. Super Jews don't fight. Right? So you don't have to make a big fight over it. Once a a couple called me up. They were in a big argument. She wants to light candles. It's not fair that he always gets to light candles. Says, well, one second. What if it turned around? It's not fair. You always light the Shabbos candles. Once a year, he gets to light Chanukah candles. You light Shabbos candles the whole year. So what if it was turned around? But in any event, I said, listen, if she wants to light, don't make an issue about it. You'll light one Chanukah menorah. She'll light another Chanukah menorah. Shalom Yisrael. There's no sin. There's no sin involved if they're Ashkenaz. There's no sin involved. Even if they're Sephardi and she wants to light, she can listen to your bracha and she can light her candles.
If she lights one light, she should light all?
No. Are we super Jew our whole life? Sometimes we are. Every day is different, right? Every day is different. But of course, if you are your own balabasa, you have to light every night because that's the minimum mitzvah. But in a case where you can choose to be Yetze or decide to be Mahadran, then you can choose to go back to the basic level and only light. Today we take it for granted that all these things are very readily available, but let's be honest. Back in the day, finding candles and oil and fuel, sometimes the stuff was hard. It was difficult. And therefore, when you told someone the difference between Mahadran versus Mahadran and Mahadran, said, well, if I follow the Sephardi custom, I can go by with only, I believe it's, how many candles? I believe it's 37 candles, right? How many total candles will we need? Or gonas, I believe it's 37 candles till the end of Chanukah. Well, if I follow the custom of Ashkenazim, that every family member, if I have 10 family members, oh boy, 370 candles, it's a lot of money. So back in the day, this was a very big deal. However, today, as I said, this isn't an issue. It's just the issue is the difference between the Sephardi and Ashkenazi traditions that we follow. Somebody who doesn't have a home. For example, most people, Baruch Hashem, are not homeless, but what about someone who's camping or someone who's in travel or in combat? Does he have to light Chanukah candles? In other words, was the obligation only upon the actual home or to the person if he's the head of his household? So this is a major debate, a major machlekes, and Rav Moshe Feinstein was of the opinion that if you are traveling, you have absolutely no obligation to light Chanukah candles because you do not have a home.
And if you stay in a room, hotel, Tzemach, whatever.
Well, that's a home. A hotel is yours. You're renting.
Even one night. I mean,
doesn't matter. It's yours. You're renting it. You paid for it. Even if it's yours. Yeah, it's yours. You're staying there. So even if it's shared ownership, it's still yours. But there's a place that's yours. Also, a train. Some place can want to say when you pay for your ticket for the train, you have that area, that seat. But others say that no, that's not really considered a home. That's not considered a place at all. And therefore, according to Moshe Feinstein, another place, technically a person who's traveling by plane, he's punished from the mitzvah of lighting Chanukah candles. But not everybody agrees, and others hold us that you still remain chayiv, and therefore that is the main approach that a person should follow. He definitely should continue lighting wherever he is. But some do follow Rav Moshe's approach, and therefore they just. When you ask a child, what should I do about lighting candles? I have a flight to catch. So some Rabbanim will say, you don't have to do anything, don't worry about it.
How could you? You can't light it, man. You can't run the train.
Obviously, we all agree not to light candles on the plane. Otherwise, the next night you'll be calling me up, how do I light candles in the prison? So obviously nobody should be doing that. The question is, you usually wait. There's some waiting time before you get on your flight. So you can take out a little menorah and put it in the airport where people don't smoke in airports, people don't light matches in airports. Take out a little menorah. Remember, only one light, minimum is one. So you can just light even one candle for a half hour. Yeah.
What about in prison?
What about in prison? I mean, you should ask the warden to arrange.
There's a whole story.
There's a whole story. The Rebbe had the head chaplain of the South Africa's prison system, went to the Rebbe in Yechidus a few days before Chanukah, and the Rebbe asked him to arrange that all the prisoners in South Africa, the Jewish prison, will have access to Chanukah candles, which he did. And then the Rebbe asked him, please arrange it also in New York. He said, I have no connections in New York. I didn't know anybody in the prisons in New York. We went to Rav Chanukah. It's a famous story. The Rav Chanukah gave him the numbers, and he called, and he said, listen, in South Africa, we just got them to change the law, and they're doing it, and that's how they allowed Chanukah candles to be lit in New York City penitentiaries, in New York State penitentiaries. Yeah. But listen, if you can't, you can't. Honest, Rahmana Patri. It's like a person asking Rabbi, how do I light candles? I don't have matches. I agree. You can't light. If you don't have matches, there's no way to light. There's no trick there's no Kabbalistic trick maybe you can tell something. There's no Kabbalistic trick I can tell you to make a fire, right? If you physically can't light, then you can't light. But if you physically can, the question is, are you obligated to? That's the question. Now, if, let's say, you're not able to light in the airport, is there any other option? So the other option is bring a flashlight with you, but a flashlight that works not with LED light, a flashlight that has a filament. You turn it on, the old flashlights. You turn it on without a bracha. According to many poskim, you fulfill your obligation of Chanukah candles. Leave it on for a half hour, and you're good.
For someone in the hospital who does that.
Stay tuned for rescheduling of the continuation of this class of Chanukah. We'll see what to do.
We're not just going to have for next Tuesday.